He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of STORYPOWER TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J Loren Norris.
Do you remember the commercials from when we were a kid? When they first came out with, I think it was Life cereal? And everybody around the table kind of looked at it like, ooh, what is that? And there was only one kid willing to try it. That one kid was Mikey. And when Mikey tried it, he didn't want to put the spoon down. He just kept eating it. And the phrase from that commercial became, he likes it. Hey, Mikey. And the reason they asked that question, hey, Mikey, is they wanted to know, how can you do this difficult thing? There's a book by Brian Tracy based on a phrase that he uses all the time. It says, eat the frog. Eat the frog. Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I can tell you there have been many times in my life where I didn't want to do the push-ups, I didn't want to do the crunches, I didn't want to do the straight arm hangs, I didn't want to drag 500 feet of hose, I didn't want to do those things that were exhausting. They required exertion. They meant my physical body was going to hurt when I was done. This last week I moved. Well, it was enough to fill a 4x16 foot trailer, 5 feet high, with shrubs and limbs that we cut off of our property. We have 60 plus trees. Well, fewer now because I cut some down. We have 60 trees on our property, and I was tired of dealing with some of them. Now, there's still some that are big and dying and risky, and I'll have to deal with them later. But I made myself sore moving tree limbs. I'm an old dude now. It's a little more work than I want to do. Should do? No, should have been doing it. Could do? Yeah, I could do it. Desired to do? No, not at all. No. In fact, Dr. Gary Brecka says this pandemic that we have of age-related diseases is based on the fact that the worst way to age and the first way to age are the same. And that is the constant pursuit of comfort. Let that settle in for a minute. The constant pursuit of comfort. In fact, Dr. Gary Brecka and Dr. Bruce Lipton both go on to say, when we stop doing the things that we don't like to do, both our mind and our bodies atrophy. See, the muscles in our body, whether it's the chest wall or it's the triceps, the biceps, the deltoids, the quadriceps, the ab, our lower back, our hip joints, our calves even, they move a whole lot of blood and oxygen through our body, and when we stop using them, they atrophy. And when they atrophy, they stop moving blood and oxygen through our body. And so the brain suffers, the lungs suffer, the heart suffers, the pancreas suffers, the spleen, which cleans the blood, it suffers. They all suffer when we stop being mobile, when we stop moving our bodies, when we stop exercising. Now, for some people, that ability to exercise, that drive to exercise, that desire to exercise, well, it went away in their 20s. For some people, the ability, just the physical strength and stamina with bad joints and arthritis and lions and tigers and bears, oh my. The will to move has diminished over time. And yet, every doctor you talk to says, if you want to live longer, keep moving. A sedentary lifestyle, sitting in front of the television, eating Cheetos, is going to make you overweight, depressed, emotionally abandoned in yourself, believe it or not, and eventually will chronically destroy your health. All kinds of chronic diseases are a direct reflection of the toxic thinking, Dr. Caroline Leaf. And it's a vicious cycle. When you stop exercising, your body begins to dilapidate. Dilapidate, is that the right word? Deteriorate, that's a good word. When you stop to exercise, your body deteriorates. And your body deteriorates, you get more frustrated, more depressed, more anxious, less active, less blood flow in the brain, more stress in the brain, more anxiety in the brain. And now you have a vicious cycle that just keeps repeating itself. Now, the contrary to that is do what you don't want to do. Ready? Do hard things. Do hard things. Get down on the floor and do 5 push-ups. Flip over on your back while you're down there and do 5 crunches. As you progress, make it 10, 20, 25, 50. When you get to 100, you're going to look in the mirror and go, who is that person looking back at me? It may take you a week. It may take you 6 months. It may take you a year and a half. But if you'll commit yourself to do hard things with your body and your mind will benefit from them. Now let's take that a little bit deeper in leadership, since that's what we're here to talk about is leadership, especially leaders who aspire to lead other leaders. See, push-ups and sit-ups, push-ups and crunches, air squats, they can replace snacking. What replaces laziness in relationships? Have you ever thought about the number of times that you should have had that conversation with that employee or that team member or that counterpart or that cohort or your boss? You should have had that relationship and said, this is not going to work. We need to rewrite these boundaries. We need to look at what we're doing right now and figure out how did we get here and what can we do better? See, it's the lazy leader who doesn't want to have that confrontation. Why? Because that kind of conversation is like doing push-ups. That's doing the hard thing. That's putting more effort into it. That's doing what you don't want to do because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel comfortable. Aging is the pursuit of comfort. If you don't want to get old, if you don't want to get retired, if you don't want to get put out to pasture, so to speak, as a leader in a relationship, in your physical body, do the hard things. Take some risks. Build new relationships. Launch out on new adventures. Read a new book or 12. How many people say, I don't read books, I just listen to podcasts because it's easier for me to consume the information? There's a great theory. I think Gary Brecka has been the most loud voice that I've heard on this, but I've heard Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton both talk about it as well. The idea that ADD, attention deficit disorder, is not actually a deficit of attention. It's not a deficit of attention. It's the attempt to pay attention to too many things at one time. It's attention overload. It's also biochemically not a deficiency in the things that are trying to be put in the brain. It's an overload of dopamine. Now, you may be looking at me going, you're a leadership coach. What do you care about this kind of stuff? Well, here's the reality. I have all these books in my office because I like to read books. Here's what I know about reading books, though. That's a hard thing. To take a book off the shelf, to block out everything else, to focus on reading that book, to take the notes necessary, to write in the margins, to underline, to highlight, to utilize that book to its maximum potential requires focus. It requires shutting everybody else off. Sometimes I'll put on headphones that has nothing but piano music in the background. So there's no words, there's no lyrics to distract me. So I can focus intently on what I'm reading. That's an entirely different thing than listening to a podcast, because while listening to a podcast, it's really easy to do 5 other things. That might be like ADD. It might be like multitasking. See, Dr. Caroline Leaf says multitasking is actually a myth, because multitasking requires the brain to operate on multiple tracks simultaneously. Now, there are some menial tasks that you could do, like walk around the block while listening to a podcast. You probably can't watch a video while walking around the block and efficiently see and hear everything that's going on there, because you're going to run into a lamppost or something, or walk off a curb into traffic. But you could listen to an audio. If you're listening to an audiobook, most people can walk and talk and chew gum at the same time. Not everybody. But if you think that you're listening to a podcast and writing something at the same time, even just the little blurb of text that I write with my podcast every day, the little tiny little bit of attempt at SEO value that I add to the text in the description box below the video, it's not even a full paragraph, usually 4 or 5 sentences. If I'm listening to a news report, or I'm listening to a podcast, or I'm listening to music, when I get to the place to write that, when I hit the time that I need to write that paragraph, I turn everything else off. Phone goes on do not disturb, music goes off, interview goes off, whatever I'm listening to goes off. I ignore any other conversation in the room so that I can write that. Why? Because I want to pay attention to what I'm doing. I want to focus. Now, whether you're reading or you're writing, focused attention is a hard thing. Maybe you've had that challenge to you from a coach or a therapist or another adult who says, look, when you're working with your kids, whether it's your children, your offspring, or you're hanging out with somebody else's kids, or maybe your job is working with kids or leading kids or teaching kids, be present. What does that mean? Kind of the same as reading a book. Stop trying to multitask. Put your energy, your emotion, your attention, your intention into the moment. Invest it in the moment. It's like doing push-ups. You can't do push-ups and drink coffee at the same time. Not very well. Not unless you want a bath. You can't do crunches and drink coffee at the same time. And if you do enough crunches, you won't want to eat that bowl of ice cream. I'm just saying, your body reacts differently when you're treating it the way you're supposed to. But you've got to do hard things. Now, here's the other hard part of hard things. If you watch somebody like an MMA fighter or a boxer or a wrestler or a martial artist, they work really hard on core strength. Core strength. Well, why do you think they do that? Well, part of it is because it gives them more mobility, more flexibility, more strength to deliver the blows, so to speak. You know what else it does? It makes them more resilient. See, if you've got a big soft gut, you've got a big soft target. And whoever's going to lay one on you, they're looking for a big soft target. They're looking for a place to throw a punch that's not going to hurt them when they throw it. They're looking for a place to land a kick or a knee. And if you haven't done your core strength, if you haven't done the hard work of working your abs, you're going to pay the price for that, because that first blow is going to lay you out. You'll be toppled over on your knees, maybe crumpled to the ground completely, ready to upheave whatever you ate last. Why? Because you weren't prepared for the impact. Well, what does that look like? It looks like doing the hard thing, doing the crunches, doing the ab twists, doing the knee pull-ups. Why? Because you got to prepare yourself for the blows that are coming. Again, let's move that back to leadership. What does that look like when you're not talking about being in the gym or being on a wrestling mat or being in a cage? Well, it looks like you're probably going to, at least at one point in time, have to deal with an unruly teammate, employee, opponent. Remember, there's a big difference between opponents and enemies. Enemies are mortal enemies. The only way to survive an attack from an enemy is utter destruction of your enemy. But there are plenty of humans that you will encounter through the course of your life who for a season will be an opponent and later will be a friend, or for a season will be a friend and then later become an opponent. Understand the difference. Understand the way you treat them. But in both cases, you will not survive the attack from an enemy or an opponent if you are not resilient. How do you get resilient? You do hard things. You make temporary sacrifices for long-term gains, temporary sacrifices for long-term investments. Those may be temporary sacrifices in relationships, in your finances. Dave Ramsey says it like this: if you want to live like nobody else, first you got to live like nobody else. If you want to drive a Bentley, first you got to eat mac and cheese and mac and cheese and mac and cheese, and maybe some canned Spam and some beans and weenies. And if you do that long enough, you save up long enough, then you have enough money to drive like nobody else, to live like nobody else. But don't do it on borrowed money, because the borrower becomes a slave to the lender. If instead you want to have those kind of relationships, business relationships, financial relationships, business opportunities that look like, feel like, and, well, they are success, you're going to have to make short-term sacrifices to have long-term gains. It's kind of like investing in the stock market in that way. Most people, day traders perhaps, will get in and out of the market several times in the course of a day or the course of a week. Most people who see long-term gains, great gains in the stock market or Bitcoin or gold and silver, are people who put their money in way back when. It's like planting a tree. You don't start that tomorrow, you start that today. The best time was 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. Start now. Start now with your crunches. Start now with your push-ups. Start now doing the hard things in your relationships. Start now doing the hard things in your business. Start now reading a book, blocking out everything else, picking a time of day that you're going to read a good book, that you're going to write in your journal, because reading and writing demand focus. Those are hard things. Building boundaries in your relationships. Those are hard things. Being present when you're around anybody who needs your attention. Shut the world down just for the moment. Look them in the eye. Listen intently to their voice, not just what they're saying, but what they're not saying. Pay attention to their body language. Care about what they have to say. Don't be distracted by the random things going on in your mind. Put your phone on silence or leave it in the other room. Be present. That's a hard thing. But see, each time you stack one of these hard things on top of another, you're building yourself into a new you. You're building character. And if you build that character and then you maintain that character, you have this really unique asset, this really cool quality, this skill set that not everyone has, called integrity. And when you have integrity, you have the resilience to face the most obnoxious obstacles, the greatest temptations, if you will. Corruption, in my estimation, is probably one of the greatest temptations. Why? Because it's an invitation to do what isn't the right thing to do. It usually looks like a shortcut to great success. It looks like compromise. It looks like giving up what you believe was the right thing, the best thing, the long-term gain for more people. Giving that up in trade for short-term, high gain for you. That's what corruption is. Corruption is always an invitation, usually by someone who's, well, already corrupted. If you've done the hard things in advance, if you've read the books, if you've written in your journal, if you've been intentional and present with the people that you care about the most, the ones who need your attention, the ones that you've invested in, if you've taken care of your body and your mind, chances are when corruption comes, you'll see it. You'll hear it. You'll recognize it right away. Why? Because you've built character. You've built integrity. And now all of a sudden, your resilience rises up and says, hold on a minute. I know right from wrong. I have core values. I value important things to me. I have principles. There are things to me more important than a little more money in my bank account, a little more influence, a little more power. In fact, I look at these things as fleeting, and there's something that I want to hold on to more than that. That's my integrity. That's my honor. That's my good name. Those are much more important to me than having my name in lights. I'd much rather people say when I'm gone, I really appreciated how much time that person invested in me, how much time they spent to me, the words of wisdom they shared with me. I'll never forget when, rather than have to look back and go, yeah, I always thought they were kind of slimy. And we look at politicians today across the board, doesn't matter the ilk, it doesn't matter their age range, it doesn't matter even where they serve in Congress. We still have to ask one question. If their salary is $192,000 a year or $250,000 a year, how is it that they go into office broke and come out of office 8, 10, 12, 20 years later, some 50, 60 years later, worth hundreds of millions? I don't know how that happens. There's got to be something happening. There's got to be some, I don't know, could it be corruption? Opportunities for them to make money that are outside of their paycheck, opportunities for them to make money to wield their influence and gain more, to trade out what they thought were core beliefs. Well, where does this money come from? Whose money is it? How did they earn it? Better question. When you die, when you're gone from this planet, will you be more impressed with yourself because you left plenty of toys for your kids to play with and your grandkids and your great-grandkids to play with? Or you'd be more impressed with yourself because you built a legacy of people who looked at you and said, I appreciate what they meant in my life, not just the checkbook, but the kind of person they are, the things they taught me, how much they believed in me. See, the book by Brian Tracy, Eat the Frog, really faces our life at a critical juxtaposition. It's hard sometimes to get up in the morning and go to work. It's hard sometimes to get up and do the right thing in relationships. It's hard to get up in the morning and do the right things with your finances, to pay the bill instead of go on vacation, to pay the car note instead of going to the movies. It's hard. Those are tough choices. Those are hard choices. It's hard to say no to your kids when they want something. It's hard to say yes when the boss demands something. It's hard to show up when you don't feel like it. It's hard to do the hard work. But if you'll do the hard work now, there will be a reward. Brian Tracy says, if you're going to have to do the hard thing anyway, if you're going to have to eat that frog at some point, don't put it off, don't delay, eat the frog first. Eat the frog the first thing in the morning. Do the hard thing first. Not only will you get it over with, make the rest of the day seem like a piece of cake. I mean, you've already eaten the frog. Everything else has to taste like cake, right? John Maxwell tells us over and over in his various books. He talks particularly about a story when he was supposed to be going on vacation with his parents to go to the beach, and when Dad got in the car and got everything loaded up, and he looked back at John, and John said, I need to put my stuff in the car. And he said, oh, you're not going. He said, what do you mean I'm not going? He said, you're not going. You didn't clean your room. We've been telling you all week to clean your room so you go to the beach with us, or you didn't clean your room. So we're going to go play, and you could stay here and clean your room. And John said, that didn't seem very fair to me, but I learned a lesson, and it's always been true. You can pay now, do the hard thing first, and play later, relax and chill. Or you can play now, relax and chill, and pay later, do the hard thing later. Most of the time, the sooner you do the hard thing, the less hard it is. Because it only gets harder over time. It only gets harder to save money. It only gets harder to pay the bills. It only gets harder to get in shape. It only gets harder to lose the weight. It only gets harder to build the boundaries in your relationship. The longer the relationship goes, the harder it is to build boundaries. The harder it is to say yes to the right thing. The harder it is to say no to the bad things, the wrong things. The hard choices should be made early on. The sooner you make a hard choice, the less hard it is. So if you want to be a resilient leader, if you want to be able to face the complex problems of life, the corruption that will come at you, I promise you, if you're a leader with any influence at all, opportunities for corruption are coming. I promise, they're coming. The question is, will you have built the character, the moral fortitude to overcome the moral cowardice that allows you to succumb to corruption? Will you be able to stand and say, I know what my core values are. I know what my principles are. I've done the ab work. Bring it on. Hit me with your best shot. I've done my core strengthening. My soul is strong. My mind is strong. My will is strong. My emotions are strong. My finances are in order. My life is ready for the biggest attack you can bring. I will be resilient. I will stand strong because I did the hard things first. Leaders who want to be resilient. Leaders who want to lead resilient leaders. They do the hard things because that's what it takes to lead. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.